Imagine for a moment everything you've ever known, the land your ancestors walked for generations, the very ground that holds your history, being ripped away from you, not by choice, but by force. This isn't a dystopian novel. It's a dark chapter in American history known as the Trail of Tears. It's a story of heartbreak, resilience, and a government's broken promise. Today, we're going to walk that trail, not just as a historical event, but as a deeply human story that still echoes today. What happens when a nation turns on its own people? The answer is a journey of 1,000 miles, paved with sorrow. In the early 1800s, the southeastern United States was not an empty wilderness. It was the ancestral homeland of several prosperous and sophisticated Native American nations: the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole. They were often called the Five Civilized Tribes because they had adopted many aspects of American culture. The Cherokee, for instance, had a written language developed by the brilliant Sequoyah. They had their own constitution, a newspaper, successful farms, and thriving towns. They weren't savages, as stereotypes suggested. They were farmers, politicians, teachers, and families living in a society they had built and cherished for centuries. Their lands, in what we now know as Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and North Carolina, were fertile and rich with resources. It was this very richness that would ultimately become their curse. Because as the United States expanded, the hunger for land and the discovery of gold in Georgia turned a covetous eye on their territory. At the heart of this conflict were figures of immense power and profound principle. On one side was Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States. A former military general known for his tough frontier attitude, Jackson saw Native American nations not as sovereign entities, but as obstacles to what he termed progress. He was a staunch advocate for Indian removal, believing it was for the good of both the white settlers and the Native Americans themselves. On the other side stood leaders like John Ross, the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. A man of mixed Cherokee and Scottish heritage, Ross was a skilled diplomat and politician. He believed passionately in the rule of law and the rights of his people. He had spent years negotiating with the U.S. government, using the American legal system to fight for his nation's sovereignty. He truly believed that justice and the treaties his people had signed would protect them. The stage was set for a monumental clash, not of armies, but of ideologies, with the fate of tens of thousands of people hanging in the balance. The turning point came in 1830 with the passage of the Indian Removal Act. Despite fierce opposition in Congress, President Jackson signed it into law. The act gave the federal government the power to exchange native-held land in the Cotton Kingdom east of the Mississippi for land to the west, in what was designated as Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma. It was presented as a voluntary migration, but the pressure was immense and coercive. The state of Georgia began passing laws that stripped the Cherokee of their rights, making it illegal for them to testify in court against a white person or to mine for gold on their own land. It was a systematic campaign to make their lives unbearable. Chief John Ross and the Cherokee Nation didn't just accept this. They fought back, not with weapons, but with words and the law. They took their case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In the landmark 1832 case, Worcester v. Georgia, Chief Justice John Marshall actually ruled in favor of the Cherokee, affirming that the Cherokee Nation was sovereign and that Georgia's laws did not apply within their territory. It was a stunning legal victory. But President Andrew Jackson reportedly defied the court, famously quoted as saying, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." The executive branch refused to enforce the Supreme Court's ruling. The law, which was supposed to be the ultimate protector of rights, was rendered powerless. This betrayal created a deep division within the Cherokee Nation. A small, unauthorized faction, known as the Treaty Party, led by Elias Boudinot and Major Ridge, believed that further resistance was futile and would only lead to the destruction of their people. Believing they were saving their nation from a worse fate, they signed the Treaty of New Echota in 1835, ceding all Cherokee lands east of the Mississippi for $5 million and new lands in the west. Vast majority of the Cherokee people, over 16,000 of them, led by Chief John Ross, did not authorize or recognize this treaty. They signed petitions in protest, declaring it a fraud. But the U.S. Senate ratified it anyway by a single vote. The treaty gave the Cherokee 2 years to voluntarily move. When most refused to leave their ancestral homes, the final tragic chapter was set in motion. In the spring of 1838, the 2-year deadline expired. Under the orders of President Martin Van Buren, Jackson's successor, 7,000 U.S. soldiers and state militia entered Cherokee territory. What followed was an act of ethnic cleansing. Families were forced from their homes at gunpoint with little more than the clothes on their backs. They weren't allowed to gather their possessions, their livestock, or even say goodbye to the graves of their ancestors. People were rounded up and herded into squalid, disease-ridden internment camps, or stockades, to await their forced removal. The summer heat and unsanitary conditions in these camps led to the deaths of hundreds before the journey even began. The journey itself, which began in the fall of 1838 and stretched into the brutal winter of 1839, is what we now call the Trail of Tears. The Cherokee were forced to march over 1,000 miles through Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, and Arkansas to the designated Indian Territory. They traveled on foot in freezing rain and snow, often without adequate food, shelter, or warm clothing. Disease, particularly dysentery, typhus, and whooping cough, ravaged the caravans. Starvation was rampant. The old, the young, and the sick were the first to perish, their bodies often buried in shallow, unmarked graves along the side of the road. A soldier who participated in the removal later wrote, "I fought through the Civil War and have seen men shot to pieces and slaughtered by the thousands. But the Cherokee removal was the cruelest work I ever knew." By the time the last groups arrived in Oklahoma in March 1839, the toll was catastrophic. Of the approximately 16,000 Cherokee who were forced from their homes, over 4,000 died either in the internment camps or along the brutal march. That's 1/4 of the entire Cherokee Nation. It was a trail of lost lives, lost culture, and lost hope. The name Trail of Tears comes from a Choctaw description of their own removal a few years earlier, but it has become synonymous with the Cherokee experience, a name that perfectly captures the unimaginable suffering they endured. This tragedy wasn't an accident of history. It was the direct result of a calculated policy of forced displacement. The arrival in Indian Territory was not an end to their suffering. They found a harsh, unfamiliar land and had to rebuild their society from scratch, all while grieving the immense loss of their loved ones and their ancestral world. The internal political divisions that led to the fraudulent treaty erupted into violence, resulting in the assassination of the key leaders of the Treaty Party, Yet, against all odds, the Cherokee people endured. They re-established their government, created a new constitution, built schools, and once again created a thriving community. Their story is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The consequences of the Trail of Tears, however, ripple through to the present day in issues of tribal sovereignty, land rights, and the ongoing struggle for justice and recognition for Native American nations. It serves as a permanent, painful reminder of the human cost of greed and prejudice, and the importance of holding power accountable. The Trail of Tears is a difficult story to tell, but it's one that must be remembered. It challenges us to look at our history honestly, to acknowledge the injustices, and to learn from them. The resilience of the Cherokee and the other removed nations is an inspiration. Thank you for joining me on this somber but important journey into our shared past. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into history. Until next time, stay curious and never stop learning.